Hi, and welcome to the Pride 2022. We are excited to have you all join us today. My name is Conny Cavol, and I'm the co-lead of the LGBTIQ+ community at Volt Europa, and I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. Before we begin, a content warning. We want to be open and honest in naming the issues facing our communities and may therefore touch on topics such as transphobia, homophobia, suicide, dead naming, body dysphoria, abuse, and hate crimes. We believe that it would be disingenuous to withhold these aspects from our discussion, but give ample warning upfront. For this year's Pride, we decided to pick a particular focus and talk about trans and non-binary rights in Europe. There's no better time than now to speak up for human rights for people of all genders, especially when parts of our European society are so vehemently denying us of these rights. We want to make it abundantly clear that Volt stands on the side of trans and non-binary people everywhere in Europe, that we see their unique experiences and fight for their equal rights to be recognized. We see the strict enforcement of gender norms and the reduction to biological sex as an antithesis to the European idea and to our liberal societies that celebrate the diversity of human expression. In this Pride event, we come together to name the very issues threatening the trans and non-binary communities today, but also to celebrate gender in all its diversity. Transphobia and non-binary erasure is a pan-European issue. Let us come together from all regions of Europe to talk about how we can coordinate our fight for human rights across borders. But first, let me clear up a misunderstanding. Trans people aren't brave. They aren't a tragic sob story or a cute makeover. They are not your entertainment or your fulfillment, an object of projection for cis and heteronormative saviorism. They don't owe cis people anything. They have the audacity to exist, to thrive, to get up after they've been shoved down time and time again. Even after rejection, they still come back with a broad smile, an open heart, and a raised middle finger. They have the audacity to spit in the face of vile transphobia while their existence is being denied from people with books in every bookstore, a family crest, and a private jet. Those lodging in number 10 Downing Street, by people who'd rather take photo ops with dictators, by people who have the insolence to distort God's message to mean anything but acceptance, who cry about being cancelled and oppressed. Trans and non-binary people have the audacity to subvert gender norms, joyfully laughing in the face of white supremacy, of cisgender fragility, toxic masculinity, and racist bigotry. Trans people have the audacity to disprove that those that call themselves gender critical, when they are only critical of those whose gender they'd like to erase. The radical feminists who cozy up with far-right anti-Semites and men's rights activists rather than building actual safe spaces for women. The people who like to police who participates in championships rather than dismantling the racist, classist, and sexist inequalities of power within organized sports, who would rather believe a corrupt manager than those that show real sportsmanship and physical prowess without doping. Policies against trans people regularly hurt cis people, and transphobes don't seem to care. Trans people are resilient. They persevere. They still have the audacity to come out, live their lives. They represent us in parliaments. They school our children, heal our sick, sweep our floors, and cook our meals. They sit in boardrooms and courtrooms. They are on air and in the air. They help birth our children, take our wedding vows, save our lives, and bury our dead. Like Ukraine, trans people have the audacity to survive. Russia has been fighting a genocidal war against Ukraine. At the same time, Putin has been plotting a genocide against trans and non-binary people, eradicating their existence, not only in occupied Ukraine, but also in Russia itself. Trans people are standing on the front lines of the war, retaliating, reporting, aiding, and rescuing their fellow Ukrainians. Trans people have the audacity to not only fight for their rights, but for the rights of all LGBTIQ+ people against bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia. They connect communities and often embody intersectionality. Cis people have the audacity to claim to know what gender is. They have the audacity to reject lived experience, to deny access, to gatekeep and define. Trans people have the audacity to defy them. And rightfully so. Trans people of color made Stonewall into a riot and became the mayors of Christopher Street. They formed their own houses, were mothers to families of more than a dozen rejected children, and kept Paris burning when cross-dressing was the only port of refuge. They were celebrating their bodies in all their grandeur between an AIDS epidemic, drug abuse, sex work, and poverty. Drag shows giving at least a temporary escape from compulsory cis heteronormativity. They learned to love, to be trans, and that love didn't come easy. To be trans is to nail the interview and still be anxious every time HR wants to have a talk. It means to look presentable every single day, although everything has been a bit too much lately. It means hiding the scars behind cautiously selected clothing, at once a shield and an expression to conform to gender norms that they have been asked to endure because of cis people's fragile sense of self. To be trans means to be stood up, to be rejected, to be afraid for your life every time you go out on a date for fear of having offended a love interest. It means being cautious about being too loud or too much, about making yourself small and insignificant, as if a participation trophy is everything life has to offer. To be trans means to stand up to your bullies and for no one else to stand up with you, as if being trans or genderqueer was a disease that you could catch by association. To be trans is to listen carefully about how you're being addressed, even years after you're coming out, because people still don't respect your pronouns and name. To be trans can mean to go through puberty all over again, feeling just as hopeless and uselessly in love, weird, irritable, anxious, euphoric, and horny. To be trans may mean to come to terms with your own limitations, the incapability to bear children, the necessity to find peace with your body when the entire world seems to want you not to. To be trans is to grieve for lost lives, loved ones, friends and allies who died along the way. For Malte, a young man from Münster, Germany, who was protecting his friends at a pride rally and got knocked down by pure ignorance and hate, and died, a precious soul forever taken away from us. But also to grieve for lives not meant to be, for whole chapters of your story unwritten. To be trans is to let go of your former self, of your old life, of a family and a home, a safe job, and a steady income to pursue something that seems unreasonable, improbable, just to discover that it is possible to start new, to find love again, and to discover a whole new side of oneself. To be trans is to be dysphoric, suicidal, depressed, to battle with yourselves and not being sure who is winning. To be trans is to be stealthy, to reject medical transitioning, to self-diagnose and self-identify. To be trans is to be human, not a demographic and not a trend. To be trans and non-binary is to cast off the burden of fitting into a neat little box and not exchanging one box for the other. To be trans is to be true to yourself and to take pride in the journey that you have taken so far. I invite you all to learn about what it means to be trans and non-binary in Europe today, and then to share in the discussion with our wonderful panelists who come to us live from Ukraine, Hungary, Portugal, Bulgaria, the United Kingdom, and the Czech Republic. Let us come together to form a place where everyone can become themselves, a beacon of hope, a Europe of europhoria. I have the honor to moderate this year's EuroPride 2022, together with two of my most cherished fellow Volters and formidable LGBTIQ+ activists in themselves, Elektra Romedorzi and Marco Grassa, who are joining me from Greece and Portugal. We will begin with a showcase on the current state of trans and non-binary affairs, our Trans in Europe presentation. Thank you and happy Pride. Elektra, please feel free to start your Trans in Europe presentation. Hi, I think Elektra, you need to unmute yourself if you're ready.
Experiencing a small problem. Give me a little bit. I'm so sorry, everyone.
All good, all good. This is, after all, a live stream, so things happen.
I hope the presentation is visible right now. Can I get a small confirmation, Connie or Maurice? You can help me with this. I'm so sorry.
Just to let you know that we can hear you and see the presentation, Elektra.
Thank you. All right. So I'm so sorry for the delay. My name is Elektra Romedorzi. I'm the board secretary of Volt Greece, and I'm coming to you from Copenhagen at the moment. So this is going to be the presentation about the trans situation in whole Europe. First of all, a content warning. You might get a small trigger because we're going to talk about suicide, transphobia, and violence. So let's start with the definitions. First of all, transgender, it is an umbrella term for people who have a gender identity or who wish to portray their gender identity in a different way than the sex assigned to them at birth. Non-binary is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity is not encompassed or represented by man or woman. Non-binary identities include people who identify inside or outside of the binary identities and take some aspects of the binary identities or reject entirely these identities. So first, we're going to talk about trans youth. And we're going to see some examples about puberty blockers. In the UK, we had a positive case at courts, which retained access to puberty blockers for youth through the NHS. While in Sweden, quite the opposite is happening, as the Swedish Health Board is against puberty blockers because they question their effectiveness, so they reject their use. In the EU, the Commission recognizes as domestic violence due to denial by legal guardians towards trans youth. So people, young people who are trans are getting violated in their home places. We're continuing with discrimination and violence. We see that violence against trans people, especially trans people of color and migrants, is rampant on a daily basis. And the anti-trans violence, makes it a real struggle for daily survival for trans people. Sadly, 2021 was the deadliest year for trans people, as there were documented 375 murders against trans and gender diverse people. A good example on banning discrimination we have from Denmark, where the Danish parliament introduced a ban on discrimination based on gender identity, gender expression, and gender characteristics. Now, to healthcare, we have seen that from the Transgender Year study that at least half of trans people accessing healthcare had to pay on their own, thus creating a medical debt for people who wish to transition. And also there is additional gatekeeping, which exists for non-binary people, gender non-conforming people, and trans people who are part of other minorities, such as people of color, migrants, or sex workers. Now, trans people at work, sadly, there is through a survey that happened, 35% of trans respondents felt discriminated, with trans women experiencing the highest rates. And this is something that we're going to see in general, that trans women sadly face some extended discrimination. A good example is here from IKEA Netherlands, which pledged to implement a transition leave for their members, for the team members of IKEA Netherlands. Now, of the housing and economics, we see that, well, 46% of respondents of the survey that was made had difficulty on making ends meet. And 54% of them, again, as I said before, are trans women. Obviously, we have problems. This causes problems with sex work. People who find difficulty in finding work may result in going to sex work, which is not obviously a bad thing, but criminalizing sex work increases people's vulnerability to discrimination, violence, exploitation, and HIV, a study found. And sadly, this continues with homelessness, as we have seen that a quarter of trans people have, one way or another, found difficulties in some form, and this is the highest rate among other LGBT groups. Now, to mental health, sadly, again, suicide prevention. 41% of transgender people attempt suicide, with 40% of them having a chance to make another attempt, which is very sad. And as we can see, 5% of the general population compared to the 41% of transgender people, it is a big difference in percentages. And we have a very bad example that from Moldova, while bullying was recognized as a criminal act, it was recognized after a trans teenager committed suicide. Now, after reproductive rights, the European Court of Human Rights found that forced sterilization as a precondition for legal gender recognition is in breach of human rights. And we have a bad example in the Czech Republic, where the Constitutional Court rejected a trans person's complaint seeking legal gender recognition without surgery. Now, to menstrual care, we have two very good examples from Spain and the UK. The Catalonian city of Girona permits paid leave for menstrual pain in public workforce. And this includes non-binary people and trans men. And the Scottish Parliament, as of recently, has enacted a law that declared access to hygiene products to all people who menstruate, not making a distinction based on gender, which is really positive. Now, to legal and administrative issues, we have two very bad examples. In Finland, it's the only Nordic country still requiring sterilization for transgender individuals before they are able to legally correct their gender. And in Cyprus, there is no legal framework in order for someone to change their legal gender. And it has been 6 years that a bill is around talks of being proposed, and it hasn't been done yet. Now, for non-binary gender marker, Malta has allowed since 2018 for people to have an X as a gender marker without medical proof, which is the best example we have. While Germany has something similar, but it requires medical proof of intersex traits, which of course would be better if it was expanded on everyone. Conversion therapy. France recently passed laws criminalizing conversion therapy on the grounds of both sexual orientation and gender identity. Now to education. There is still discrimination in school, and the survey we have quoted so far found that 33% of trans people experience discrimination in education, and all of age groups, trans and intersex young people, were most likely to experience physical and sexual assault in school. We have a positive example yet again from a variety of countries. Greece, Bulgaria, Lithuania, and Romania introduced digital learning modules to implement diversity policies in schools and create an inclusive environment. Of course, trans people in Europe and non-binary represent us already. From Belgium, with a trans deputy prime minister, in the UK, both with a trans and a non-binary person having a role in government, one being a mayor and one being a member of parliament, and in France, as you can see. Now, to rainbow families, we have a positive example from Iceland, which recognizes parenthood to trans and non-binary parents, based on a bill introduced by the Minister of Justice in November 2020. Now, we haven't covered a lot of topics, and we need to talk about a lot of things, such as adoption, elderly care, trans in pop culture, sports, of course, which is a very hot topic, fetishization, loneliness and dating, and many, many, many more topics. Europe has to be our home and has to be our open home. Europe is in need of being a better place and need to be a better home for everyone. Thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you so much, Elektra. That was really, really cool. We had a really good insight into some of the topics that we're also going to touch on in the panel discussion. Of course, that could only be a selection of topics. We can't touch on all of it, but we wanted to give you an overview of some of the most hot button topics discussed in the LGBTIQ+ community, but specifically in the trans community. And some of these topics we are now going to be able to talk about with panelists. And I already see a couple of them joining us right now. I will give you an introduction in a second. So of course we will have just a number of questions. We'll could probably fill days with this wonderful cast of people who were able to win to join us for our Volt Pride 2022. I would like to welcome Edward Rees, who is from Kyiv Pride, and who's joining us, I think, also from I think Denmark, right? Is that right? Okay. You're using he and him pronouns, Edward, would you like to say a few things shortly about your organization?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Edward. I am from Ukraine, from Kyiv. Right now, I am a refugee in Copenhagen, Denmark, and Kyiv Pride is, I would say, the most visible and one of the biggest LGBTQ organizations in Ukraine. We are the people who make the biggest Pride March in Ukraine, in the capital, in Kyiv. We are a trans-led organization, though we are not like trans-specific, but the majority of people are trans, non-binary, or intersex. This happened somehow. So by now, the most things that we do are not the things that we do before, because there is war in our country and we have to switch to helping people in practical stuff.
Thank you so much. That was already wonderful and really great that you could join us today. Let's move on to our representative from Hungary, which is Sofia Szabo from the organization Prisma. And I think you're going by she, her, is that correct? Yeah, if you could say a few things shortly about you and your organization.
Yes, thank you, and I greet everyone who are watching now. So my name is Zsófia or Sofia, doesn't really matter. I'm originally from Hungary, but living abroad in Sweden in the last 8 years now. And Prisma is absolutely underground little trans organization which was created by a few trans persons living abroad because the situation for trans persons worsened in the last few years in Hungary. And we decided that we have a little better resources with our Western salaries and such to help the work in Hungary. So we try to help the Hungarian trans, non-binary and intersex people from abroad. We are participating every year in Budapest Pride as partner. We have organized the first and only so far Trans Pride in Budapest 3 years ago, and we have a support group for trans persons in Hungary, both offline but mainly online, so everyone with internet connection from any parts of the country could join, or even from abroad.
Thank you so much as well. Let's move on to Heather. Heather is joining us from Sheffield in the UK and is representative of the organization Say It. Heather, if you may.
Hi, yes. So I run an organisation called Say It, which provides mental health wellbeing support to LGBTQ plus young people aged from 11 through to 25. We do run youth groups, provide counselling services, work in schools. We do training and education, and increasingly a lot of political campaigning work due to the attacks on trans and non-binary rights in the UK. So a lot of campaigns against healthcare and conversion therapy and legal rights and all of the issues that we'll be talking about today.
Thank you so much as well for you. I think your pronouns are also she, her, is that correct? Cool. All right. Just want to get that right so that when we talk to each other, it's, everything is cleared up. We're moving on to Victor Heumann from Transparent, which is from the Czech Republic, and I think you go by he, him. So if you wish to present yourself real quick.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm joining from Prague, Czechia. The organization Transparent that I am a co-founder of was founded 7 years ago, and for these 7 years we have been working for the benefit of transgender and non-binary people here as basically the only organization that is trans-led and focusing solely on trans and non-binary people, providing support groups, counseling, community events, but also doing awareness raising events and presentations, trainings. And we also have an allied, like a small branch organization called Queer and Trans Youth, working with teenagers from 13 to 21 years old. And we are also now recently involved in trying to change the legislation, which is quite unfavorable towards transgender people in Czechia.
Thank you so much for that little information and your presentation already. Let's move on to Robin Zlatarov from Bulgaria, who is a representative of the Bilitis Foundation and going by he and him pronouns, if I believe correctly. Over to you, Robin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robin. I am coming to you from Sofia, Bulgaria, and I am a part of the team of Bilitis Foundation, which for more than 15 years now has been closely working with all parts of the LGBTI plus community, but specifically and more so currently with the trans and intersex community here in Bulgaria. We do a lot of community work and organizing, as well as legal right recognition for any kind of LGBTIQ plus issue. And we've been doing a lot of meaningful work around the war in Ukraine as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for coming, definitely. And last but not least, Heather Bertolo from Opus Diversidades, and those who've already been with us last year in the EuroPride 2021 might recognize him. He's been with us for the second time now, and that's, of course, very, very lovely. Over to you, Heather.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me once again. I would like to congratulate you, Connie, for your introduction. It was brilliant. So I don't know what are we going to say after you, but well, Opus is one of the oldest associations in Portugal. We are celebrating this year our 25th anniversary. We are a non-partisan association, of course, but whenever LGBTQIA rights are at stake, we will join. So we are here gladly. Just a disclaimer, I would rather have someone trans, non-binary or intersex from Opus speaking here. I'm a cis guy, but unfortunately, it was not possible to get someone available to be here today. But so I'll try to speak about our work and not about how trans people feel.
Thank you so much. And I think you also go by he, him, right?
Yes.
Just to make sure. Cool. All right. Let's start out. I try to make a mixture of questions that are directed to specific representatives and more general questions. If I am asking a question to someone directly, then there's of course also the chance for someone else to chime in if it's also something that they are fighting with, dealing with, that they also want to tackle. However, I want to start with Edward, and I have a specific question that I wanted to ask, and I guess it's sort of like a little bit on the nose, but is there even capacity with all the things that are going on right now in Ukraine and the terrible things that we've been hearing out of, I think, the Kharkiv Oblast? I think that's it sounds to me almost like, how can we even talk about trans issues here? Like, is there even capacity to talk about trans issues while these things are going on?
I would say that trans people in Ukraine don't stop being trans while there is war, and we have definitely while we are getting ready for this talk, I was looking at the pictures from Izum city, which is in Kharkiv region, the picture of mass graves which Russians did there. And it is really awful, and it's really painful to see all of that. But definitely we understand that, for example, there could be trans people in those graves, because trans people are part of the population in any country, in any city, in any situation. So definitely we can talk about us while we are fighting this war. And trans people in Ukraine right now have some specific problems. For example, sometimes people lose opportunity to get hormones for their therapy, or for example, people don't have opportunity to contact their doctors because sometimes a doctor can be killed or a doctor can become a refugee and go to another country and they cannot connect. People can get to the occupation, and it's like really, it can be much more problematic for a visibly trans person than for anyone else. In the territory which is occupied by Russia, which is the most homophobic, transphobic country, I guess, or one of the most. One little thing, but it's not like so little. Sometimes when youngsters and teenagers who are trans, they have to return to their transphobic families. And I personally work with teenagers and young people, and they tell me those stories a lot, that they have to travel to another country with their transphobic family, and they don't have like any community, they don't have any opportunity to leave this situation because they are refugees and they don't have any like rights because, for example, they are minors or teenagers. So there are a lot of different problems of trans people which are specific to the war situation, and definitely we have to continue talking about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. You already touched on a topic that I want to extend on a little bit, which is the topic of trans youth. You already said that it's sometimes young trans people, trans teenagers get into very difficult situations, dangerous situations even. And one of the questions is like, how can we as Europeans, as activists, make sure that the life-saving information sometimes that is out there for trans youth gets to these young people so that they can help themselves, get help, get support. And this is actually a question to everyone. So if of course, Edward, if you want to answer that, but it's also obviously something that the other panelists should be able to answer.
Yeah, I think I will be short. I think that if we are talking about Ukraine, it's definitely very important to contact Ukrainian organizations like Kyiv Pride, who are we are, for example, very popular among young people. And if you have any information about like any country that you can provide help for Ukrainian teenage or young or like as a whole trans refugees, please contact Kyiv Pride and we will spread it. We will like bring it to the people. And if we are talking about teenagers or minors specifically, if you want to provide some help and tell about the help that you provide, please use TikTok. They all use TikTok.
Yeah, I think that resonates. Heather, I think if I remember correctly, your organization specifically is active in the area of supporting young trans people and teenagers. What are some of the things that you can do, especially under these very also difficult circumstances, quite different circumstances, but also difficult circumstances in the UK under the Liz Truss government that has been already been so transphobic in the run-up to her becoming the Prime Minister?
At the moment, we do a lot of work in schools. So to get information to young trans and non-binary people, we get information to all young people because there are lots of young people who may not be out, may not know who to approach. So if we go into schools, we can get that information blanket to all young people, regardless of gender, which currently we are still able to do under the sort of current media climate and government. That is potentially going to be more difficult. But I would absolutely echo what Edward says in the use of social media. So the phones in our office do not ring from young people. They will DM us on Instagram. They will see us on TikTok or other social media. So we're being sort of really active on those platforms and making sure that we meet young people wherever they are at. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that touches on another topic that I also wanted to talk about. Maybe it's a sort of like a transition to also to the topic of education and access to education that is sometimes an issue. And I think that is especially an issue in a situation where the government like is almost authoritarian or is authoritarian, and I might think that that might make it a lot harder for young trans people to have access to knowledge like sex education, but also just like positive, inclusive gender education. Is there something that that is already being tackled by organizations such as Prisma, or yeah, what would you like to say towards that topic?
Yes, thank you. In Hungary, the situation is quite bad, I can say, in this case, because the government has banned the legal gender recognition at all, and before there was not possible for minors at all. So it was really hard question for them. And during the last year, the government also banned the civil organizations from the schools, such as sex education or education about LGBTQI topics, but generally has banned every civil organization from the schools. So it leads to much more hostile environment for this youth, much more bullying, and they become more closeted, coming out much later, afraid to come out, and this has really serious effects on their later lives. So, and there isn't really much which a civil non-governmental organization could do, but we tried which we can. So we led a campaign together with 11 other NGOs in the last elections, because there was a referendum at the same time with the elections about almost inclusive or almost about transgender topics, such questions as do you want to have to civil organizations inform about your child about gender reassignment surgery in the kindergarten? So, and such absolutely nonsense questions. And these 12 NGOs led a successful campaign to the citizens give invalid votes in the referendum, and because of the invalid votes, the whole referendum became invalid. So it was our biggest victory, although the government also reasoned like, okay, the referendum was invalid, but the valid votes were mostly in our opinion, so ethically we won the referendum. So it is the Hungarian propaganda just now.
Yeah, that is quite unfortunate, but also very, very happy to hear that that was that your organization was able to accomplish that. Maybe a separate topic related, though, might be one of legal gender recognition and how that is attainable for not only young trans people, but trans people of all ages, and how that is being able to be achieved. Victor, I think we quickly talked about when we were preparing for this panel discussion about this topic, and how your organization was able to sort of support trans people in exactly that, in talking about how to achieve how to get legal gender legal gender recognition, if that is what the person wants. What can you tell us about this and your work so far in that area?
It is quite complicated in the Czech Republic to attain legal gender recognition, although we are still very lucky to have the process that enables us to have our gender legally recognized. However, there are several things that are making the lives of trans and non-binary people completely difficult, and also for non-binary people there's no chance to get their legal gender recognized, of course, because we don't have any third option. It's the whole process is quite gatekept by the sexologists and the legal gender recognition. The legislation is tied up to the medical process, and so we are all in hands of the medical experts. So what we are trying to do is to raise awareness among the transgender community, and also among the doctors, among the experts, on what the needs are and how they are not matching what the system requires. And what we are primarily now trying to do is raise awareness among the community or the people themselves to know their rights, even within this kind of very strict and not very favorable system, which requires sterilization or castration for legal gender recognition, also divorce, and also we have some quite strict naming conventions related to the form of the name that we have. But there's still some kind of maneuvering space. And people very often don't know what they can do, and what they are, like that they don't have to be forced into some of the steps or some of the processes that the doctors ask them to do, or even also when changing the name or the legal gender marker, some of the registry offices are just pushing trans people to do stuff that is not required. So in this respect, we are very much trying to help.
Thank you so much. Maybe something related. Also, my next question would be related to that, because it is even quite complicated to have access to both healthcare and the legal aid, the legal support that is sometimes needed or required to make these changes. It sounds to me almost like it would be impossible to be trans out in the countryside. How much of a problem is that really? Is it really possible only to live an out trans life in the city, or is there a chance also for people who come from like more smaller towns or smaller regions to also be to also live their lives there, or do they all have to come to the capitals of Europe? That question I would like to ask to Robin, if what your experiences are there, and if you think that there's if there's a need for people to be in big cities in order to have that access.
Well, yes, the short answer is yes. You need to be in a bigger city in order to get any kind of access to, whether that be legal aid, whether that be hormonal therapy. It vastly depends on your region, but the most legal gender recognition cases are in bigger cities. And our procedure is very unregulated. You have no idea what kind of steps you have to go through in order to change your legal gender marker or your name. And access to surgery and hormonal therapy is also incredibly unregulated as well. You have to get them off the black market. Basically, you have a very hard time finding a specialist who works with you. And that is even hard even in the capital. It's hard everywhere, but it's even more tough when you're in a smaller city or in the countryside. And that's mainly because if you're in the capital, you kind of have a bit more access to resources. You have access to the only community center in Bulgaria, which is the Rainbow Hub. You have a bit more ability to meet people like you at all and experience a safe space and find more information on how to get the things that you need. And we haven't been able to reach out to a lot of trans people in the countryside. And I think that is mainly due to fear, to reach out and to not be supervised and things like that, let alone being a trans youth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sort of gives us the chance to go full circle now. I think that probably it's easier in the cities, but I think in the long run it would be really nice if there's a much larger network. But trans organizations are just not at the point yet where that is even possible, stretched thin as they are. And I think that sort of leads me to the question that I have to Helder, which is with the, for example, with the election of Bolsonaro in Brazil, has there been an impact sort of on trans people who have migrated, for example, to Portugal, and how has that impacted, and how people can, organizations such as yours can respond to trans people migrating to other countries? And I think what I meant with full circle is also, of course, that also means for people who are fleeing from the war in Ukraine. How can we make sure that they have the care and the aid that they need, and at the same time also the chance to maybe obtain a legal gender change or healthcare in the country of refuge?
Okay. Well, we are very lucky in Portugal because we have really progressive laws regarding name changing and gender marker changing. It is very easy nowadays to do it. Regarding healthcare, it is a little bit more difficult. Things are in place, but the waiting times are really long. When it comes to migrants, we receive requests not only from Brazil, but from other countries that ask us to, that request asylum in Portugal. When it comes to racial and trans people coming from Brazil, the first thing is the residence permit, and all things related with migrants. But fortunately, there are several associations dealing with trans people and non-binary people directly. We have, it is called House T, is a house organized by trans and non-binary people, mostly from Brazil, and they help each other, and they start living together so that people can get their autonomy. And we have several trans association as well. Opus is a LGBTA organization, not only trans, but we run a shelter house. And nowadays, most of the people who seek our help are trans people and non-binary people, especially young people. And although the law is being progressive, the society is not. So we are facing with the problem of having lots of people who get homeless. They are expelled from home. And I used to say that as for gay and lesbian people think they must look like straight. It looks like trans people can only be accepted if they look like cis people. And that's a really a problem, mainly for trans women that want to make some kind of physical transition. It is difficult to look like a cis woman and have lots of problems regarding job, healthcare. They are pointed out on the streets, they are aggressed. we are also defending some people in the courts of law nowadays because they suffer from transphobia in their workplace. But back to you. Yes, we have a huge Brazilian population, a huge LGBT Brazilian population, and a huge trans population. We also have many trans people working as sex workers. And that's also a problem because they need not only health support regarding their transition, but also regarding HIV, sexual transmitted illnesses, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for touching on all of these very, very important topics. I want to open up now the round a little bit and ask a little bit of a cheeky question. You already, we already touched on it a little bit. There are some people in Europe today who would call being transgender or non-binary, using neo-pronouns, etc., trendy, something that has just come up in the last couple of years, and that is going through Europe as a trend and will be gone again in a couple of years. What are your experiences on what would you answer to people who call themselves gender critical and to see this as just a trend? Who would like to go first?
Okay, I try.
Yeah, please go.
So, first of all, it might seem trendy, but it's mostly about the amount of information which one can get now, because just 5 or 10 years ago, there were much more limited sources, not to mention 20 or 50 years ago, when there was almost nothing. So, and it's just because of the amount of information, there is we can say, trend to recognize their transness or non-binary status, but it's not a larger proportion of the population. So it's the same population, but thanks to the information, they could recognize themselves. That's one side. And the other side, the gender critical side, which is on the rise, sadly, almost everywhere. I think it's a quite popular approach, because it connects the left and the right, and even those who are progressive could live their moral panic without shame, and they can kick a much weaker group under the bus. It might sound a little harsh, but it is. So they who call themselves radical feminists, many of them are not really feminists at all, and many of them has passed as feminists, but they became burnt out and disenfranchised by feminism, because they see that they fought for rights and everything else, and they weren't such successful, and they just have to find a scapegoat. And the trans people is a really, really good scapegoat.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think Robin wanted to talk next on the same topic.
Yes, so when it comes to here in Bulgaria, we had the anti-gender movement is incredibly rampant here since 2018, when the Istanbul Convention was rejected by the Constitutional Court for being unconstitutional, because trying to protect women's rights is very unconstitutional. And that caused a gigantic wave of incredibly transphobic and homophobic movements to rise up. And finally, the overwhelming opinion of the typical Bulgarian is that being any kind of part of the LGBT community is a trend. It's something brought on by the European values and union. It's something that is absolutely not Bulgarian at all. And what we've been doing for the last 15 years is combat that belief, mainly because we've been here all of this time. We've been here since the dawn of time, truly, and that cannot be changed. And specifically when it comes to non-binary people, there's very much this notion that it's just a trend, that it's the young people doing it. And me, a very young trans non-binary person, I can tell you it is because of the access to information. It is because everything is improving, and for me, having access to the internet from a very early age has been life-changing to my identity and to the way I feel accepted and seen. So that's, for me, if it's a trend, it's a really good trend. If I have to be honest, it's a really good trend. Continue spreading the information and making people feel good and feel seen.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see already hands raised from first Heather, then Heather, and then back to Sofia.
Yeah, I think in terms of trend, we quite often talk about the 80s and when more LGBT people came out. So we've seen this before, when more information has become available, when more rights have been there, when people have been legally protected or aware that they've come out. And it's exactly the same, that, there isn't an increase in trans people. There's less people who are hidden and closeted. But in terms of the gender critical, I think what we see is there's actually a very small number of people who are really actively pushing gender critical transphobic values, but there's a lot of people hearing them and a lot of people who are worried. So I think we really try to push the myth busting, because we get so many parents who will phone us up and go, my young person has just come out and I'm really worried that they're going to have surgery, and it's like, they're 8, that they are not going to be having surgery any time soon, if that is in their future at all. So sometimes it's on the myth busting, sometimes it's on the challenging the idea that these are feminist arguments at all. So we had attacks on the provision of puberty blockers in the UK and for young people's ability to consent, and actually pointing out where the people who were claiming to argue this under the guise of feminism, that actually one of the largest impacts of that, other than the impact on trans people themselves, would be it was an attack on Gaelic competence. So had that gone through, the number of young cis women who wouldn't have been able to access contraceptives as a result of that as well, and going, how can you argue that attacks on bodily autonomy for anyone is a feminist value? But yeah, really doing those sorts of myth busting. But yeah, we need to keep challenging it, but trying to find a way to challenge it without giving ear to and amplifying the transphobic narrative as well can be a really sort of fine line to tread.
Thanks. Yeah, Heather, please.
Yes, well, I think Robin really nailed it regarding information. So one of the things that we try is convince institutions, public and private, to receive training, information, formation, because it is true that we need to understand and counter this transnational anti-gender movement. It is not inorganic. It is there. It is well organized. And fortunately, there are some movements that are studying it and trying to countering it. But all the fake news that they spread, some of them look like the ones we heard about women's rights. It was not natural for a woman to smoke. It was not natural for a woman to wear trousers. And now we are hearing the same things regarding LGBT and mainly trans and non-binary people. They spread the word that poor children that are being mutilated. Trans children are not being mutilated, but intersex children are, and we do not hear a single word about it, because it is done within between parents and doctors to fit the children in these two boxes. So they worry about a thing that does not happen, that is mutilation or surgery, sex change surgery in trans people, and they not worry about mutilations in intersex people. Then they think that they can tell something about what trans people think or feel. And it is not up to us to seize people, to accept, to tolerate, to decide anything regarding trans people. They owe absolutely nothing to these people. It is them to live as they want to live. And regarding this non-binary trend myth, we have non-binary people all across history in the main civilizations all over the world. And actually, when you ask if it is a trend, also the inclusive and neutral language, we are very proud to have hosted last year a presentation of the first book regarding inclusive and neutral language, and Pri Bertucci, a non-binary trans person from Brazil, is here again in Lisbon to make workshops and to present again the book. We think we'll do it within the next weeks. So it's the first book, because in Romance languages is even more difficult than in Anglo-Saxonic languages. But we will do it. We cannot stop. We cannot shut. To be silent is to be connivant with all this hate speech.
Absolutely. Yeah, really strong point there. I see that, Sophia, you have raised your hand. If it's okay with you, because you already spoke on the topic, I would let Edward speak first, and then if it's okay, you to speak right after.
Yeah, I would just love to note that, in fact, the roots of many of the problems that we discuss right now about misinformation, about gender critical movements and anti-trans movements, the roots of many of those problems are actually in the same place where are the roots of our main problem in Ukraine. Because we all know, and there are information and investigations about Russia being a part of, for example, Trump presidency, and Russia being a part of some political things in Hungary and in many other countries in Europe where far-right movements are strong. Because Russia loves saying that Ukrainians are Nazis, but there is no more Nazi country than Russia is in this world at the moment. So I would like to say that it's really important to inform people, but also it's really important to fight misinformation and teach people how to check facts and teach people where the truth lies, and support the fight that we have with Russia, the main fight with Russia right now. Because what we see in Hungary, in Germany, in some other countries, in Sweden even, elections were several days ago, and I'm near, so I know all the stories, that there are a big influence of Russian propaganda in all the places. So yeah, I think that we also have to fight propaganda consolidated together.
Yes, and I will be really, really short. So I just want to say I feel everything that Robin said on my skin, because in Hungary is the same reasoning of the government and exactly the same reasoning to just not accept the Istanbul Convention and so on and so on. And yes, and the other side, I live in Sweden, so yes, I really feel these elections a few days ago, and I really feel that these parties work on Russian propaganda and mostly, I think, by Russian monetary support as well.
Yeah, very, very much so. Let's do a little bit of a turn in terms of the topics that have been touched on so far. It's been quite heavy, and of course, because I mean those are the hot button topics that we need to talk about. But there are also other sides to being trans in Europe today, and one is hopefully that we'll see a little bit more representation as well. I think that we've seen with the LGBTIQ plus community how that has had an impact. What do you see, or what do you wish for in terms of representation in politics, but also generally in media for making trans people more visible in Europe? What are your thoughts on that? Who would like to go first?
I would also be fast about the representation. I'm kind of working a little on this topic, explaining people in Ukraine about trans representation. So personally for me, the amazing thing about trans representation would be if we would see some happy trans people in the media. Because like all the drama that we have had for many years, it's totally exhausting. And like the things that some of the series or movies I see on Netflix are nice right now, because like they have just a simple trans person who just does some simple things, lives their life, and everything is okay. So I would be really happy if like we would see more just representation of simple people without any drama, tragedy, I don't know, even without painful coming outs, because it's totally exhausting to see it again and again and again. And I think that the problem is like the most of the media is made by cis people, so definitely they show what they see.
Yeah, I'm 100% seeing exactly what you mean there. We have a number of hands, and I think the first one was from Victor, and I'm hoping that I'm going in the wrong, in the right direction here. So I think it was Victor first. I think then Heather, and then Sophia. I think that was.
Thank you. I think, yeah, Edward made several very good points talking about the positive representation, the positive visibility, and I think it also helps us combat pathologization, because it shows us as competent people who are in various positions in the society, doing all sorts of jobs and having our lives, having our families and so on. So for us, this has been a very important part of our fight, and we said that if we can afford to be visible, some of us can, we are. And for instance, here in the now in the Czech Republic, we have a YouTuber who's a trans woman, and it's so important because she doesn't have this kind of she doesn't fit within the standard medical presentation of a trans person, and by showing that, she opens up in the diversity of our stories, and the fact that surgical treatment is not a thing that would be on the agenda of every trans person or non-binary person who is there. So it helps combat also, as I said, pathologization, but also this legal things that are, like lying heavy on us, because it shows how this is oppressive to many of us who speak up.
I think I said Sophia is next, but I might be mistaken. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's first Heather, then Sophia, then Heather.
I think Heather was before me, but no problem. Well, yeah, there was Ethos, European Community Program regarding eradicating homophobic and transphobic speech from the media. And one of the results they got, and one of the things they proposed, was that when we see racialized ethnic people on TV, they are speaking about racism. When we see LGBT people, they are speaking about LGBT phobia. So we should have people, a diversity of people, speaking about their professions. A trans woman that is a Nobel Prize, or an MP, or a minister, or a scientist, and that is true representation. So on the 4th of September, there was the International Day on Sexual Health. It is a national day now in Portugal. I think we are the first country to have it as a national day. And we organized a talk called Women with Penis and Men with Vulvas. And for the first time, I heard trans people saying we should be speaking about euphoria and not dysphoria. And I think this is the way.
Thank you so much.
I really wanted to say almost exactly the same as Heather. We need more professionals, because it's really good that we have trans actors and trans models now, but we need to have on the other fields of life, professional lives, scientists, lawyers, politicians, and so on and so on. And it's really, really important for me as a trans person with PhD, and so I'm really on the science side of this balance.
Thanks. I think it's Heather now.
Yeah, I think we're all really on the same page on this one. I was going to say that we see trans representation when it's supposedly trans issues, but trans issues is the entirety of our lives and existence. So we want to see trans and non-binary people talking about our transport systems or environment, or I want to see trans people hosting gardening shows or whatever it may be, and normalizing the existence of trans and non-binary people in every aspect of our lives, not just, oh, we've got a specific panel or show about transition, so we need to get a trans person for that. Actually, across our existence, and not just when it's a supposed trans issue.
I wanted to add a little bit of a different angle to this, because while positive trans representation is incredibly necessary, the representation of trans and non-binary people in Bulgaria so far has been absolute stigmatization and a heavy discussion about organs and surgeries, and just a breakdown of what the trans person is and how they function, as well as pathologization. Yes, I hope you understand the word I'm meaning to say. Because to be recognized as a trans person in Bulgaria, you have to get a psychiatric diagnosis still, which is And when it comes to trans representation, we do need more positive representation for sure. I absolutely agree. But we also, specifically in my context, need to talk about the ridicule that trans and non-binary people go through every single day of their lives in order to live and in order to function in our country.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a really good overview, and I think it's also good to hone in on not only what it would mean to have the positive representation, but also what the negative representation entails and how that can be very destructive. I think we're about at the time where we have the prepared questions turn over into the questions from our audience, which I hope we already have a bunch of them. From my side already, I am very thankful for everybody's input on all of these questions. We didn't even get close to finishing the stack, of course, but that was never really something that we were able to do because there's just not enough time. But I think that's just going to be something we need to tackle in the next World Pride. However, of course, from our audience, it's really nice to also hear what their questions are. And for that, I would like to ask Marco to come onto the stage. And see if there are some questions already. I don't see a Marco yet. I do have more questions, though. Maybe we can finish with one question, which is towards allies. What can we do in order to make sure that allies know what we need from them, what kind of support is necessary, and how to best help? What would be something to do about that? Just a quick round, maybe from you, if you're happy to respond to that real quickly, and then we'll hand it over to Marco.
Hello.
Do you want to first answer some of those answer to that question? Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, well then I guess let's move over to Marco and to the first questions from the audience.
Thank you, Connie, for moderating this great panel. So we do have one question right now to start. The question would be, how can we get better job safety and healthcare to sex workers that are trans or non-binary? Would anyone like to go first?
Okay, I just start. So there are a legal side of this one. So it has to be non-discriminated by the law, just to not be persecuted, being who they are. And on the other side, we have to raise awareness in the law enforcement, in the healthcare personnel, and so on, to work according these laws that doesn't persecute the sex workers and trans sex workers especially. So it's a hard work, but it must be done because most of the trans sex workers are not sex workers because it was their dream in their life to be sex workers, just because they haven't got any decent job on the job market being trans. And they are mostly forced to be sex workers. And therefore, they have to be protected.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Helder, you also want to add something?
Yeah, I think there are two words, proximity and trust. And fortunately, as you know, Marco, we have GAT, it is called Group of Activists Undergoing Treatments, is an NGO doing an amazing work regarding HIV and sexual diseases, but they have also groups working directly with sex workers, namely with trans and non-binary sex workers. So this is really important, so that these people are not afraid. They trust the technicians and they really listen and seek them for help. And another thing that I heard on that National Day on Sexual Health is that there has been some skewing in the statisticals, because they are considering trans women, sex workers, trans women, sex workers as men. And this is skewing all the data across Europe. So even the researchers are not considering the correct gender of those people.
Thank you very much. And also one last question, because we are running short on time. So how could we make elder care services more accessible to trans people and also better provide for late transitioners? Would anyone like to go first on this topic?
Can you repeat the first part?
Yes. How can we make elder care services more accessible for trans people? Would anyone like to go first?
I try.
Thank you.
Just again, it's a legal side as well, and this emotional and such support side that the elder care personnel just recognize the trans persons in their gender, and just help and take care for their needs, as they should take care every other of their patients' needs or customers' needs. So it's the same in my eyes. And what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
It was, how could we better provide for late transitioners? So people
late transitioners, yes. It's a hard question, because the late transitioners has a double stigma. Many in the trans community as well stigmatize them as they are not really trans, because if they were trans, they could come out and transition much younger, but it's not true. There are many things in the life that could deny the early transition, and I think it just general awareness and general raise of empathy for these people, and looking through the words come in Swedish to my mind. So it's how they look like. They just ignore how they look like, and see through the skin and see the person inside only. I could say that one, because late transitioners cannot be as with the bad expression passable as those who transition in young age, but it doesn't matter. They are who they are, and they should have the same support.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Would anyone else like to add something?
I can just say something regarding health. when it comes to both things, mental health is an issue, and the national health system does not provide enough healthcare regarding mental issues, not for the general population, and even less for LGBT and within LGBT people, trans and non-binary persons. So that should be thought about. These people really need support, and we also need to decentralize the centers that deal with surgery, hormone processes, health system. As I was saying, we have a progressive legislation, but then people have to go to Coimbra. We have opened the second community center, LGBT community center in Madeira last year, so in the islands. But whenever they need treatments, they have to come to the continent, to Portugal, and sometimes it is up to the associations to get the money to pay for the flight. So there are a lot of things, many things that need to change in this area.
Thank you again for your input, Elder. If no one else will want to add something to this topic, then I'm afraid that's all the time that we had for the Q&A questions. And now we'll be jumping on to the country panoramas. And we'll be here then. Oh, I think that maybe we do have it. We have time for one more. Great. And specifically because you mentioned mental health, Elder, I'll try to find something about that. So how can healthcare professionals leave trans people at ease during mental health diagnostics and all sorts of diagnostics when it comes to, well, to health?
I think I'd like to start on this one. Well, considering the situation in Bulgaria where being trans is already still considered a mental illness, it's really tough. I've heard absolute horror stories about how parents take their trans children to psychologists and tell them to fix them, and how even when you go as a trans person, and if you're older and you go to a psychotherapist, you are faced with, oh, okay, well, this isn't fine, this isn't a normal thing. So the biggest thing that we can do is spread information. Mainly, that is our main tool in all of our battles, is spread information, make these people learn what they have to in order to receive this, but also build allies. One of our biggest organizations, Bulgaria Glass Foundation, works with Cabinet BG, which is a platform for gaining better access to therapy services, specifically in the mental health industry. And the collaboration between them included, of course, teaching the therapist how to deal with, how to approach LGBTI people and issues. And it has been amazing. The feedback from the people from the community itself has been beautiful. So we need more of that. We need more collaboration, more information being spread. That's kind of what I can say.
Thank you so much, Robin. I believe Victor will go next.
Well, I raised my hand before Robin said what I wanted to say, basically, but no, just to point this out, that we are now also organizing programs with our allied organization, or big institute, which is the National Institute for Mental Health in the Czech Republic. And we've got like very great success with that, because we've already trained over 60 therapists in the program. And what we are seeing is that they are eager to learn the information we are giving them. It's more about them not having access to information about the specifically our local conditions as well, and what are the stress factors for transgender people specifically in terms or in relation to the system, to the healthcare system here in the Czech Republic and so on. So they are eager to learn, and they are listening, but to have the, you know, like this interface to find or raise their voice so that they can listen, and that we can give the information to them directly.
Thank you, Victor. I believe Heather should go next.
Yeah, quite similar to what's been previously said, but in the NHS system in the UK, we quite often find that they then refer back to us, somewhere, a small charity, because the NHS doctors and medical staff don't know enough about trans and non-binary people. So they say, oh, we're really sorry, we don't know enough about this, so can we send them to you? And it's like, well, you're our entire National Health Service, and we're a really small charity. You know, we don't have the capacity for that. You need to educate yourselves. You need to have that information. And you know, if it was any other demographic of people being turned away and saying we cannot provide a health service to people of colour or to disabled people, but they think it's acceptable to do that for trans and non-binary people, and go, well, actually, you don't get a state medical service. We can send you to this charity because they know about you. And I think we really need to challenge that, and we need to get mandatory trans and non-binary education into our medical education. So we take medical students every year so that they get a couple of weeks with us, which is completely insufficient, but at least they get something. But that really needs to be rolled out nationally, and to be a mandatory part of medical training.
Exactly, mandatory is the least. And thank you so much, Heather. I believe Sophia will now go last.
Yes, thank you. First, I absolutely agree with Heather. We must incorporate the trans specific issues into the medical school. And that's really, really important to make the medical professionals understand that they should not be gatekeepers, but helpers and supporters of trans people. And they just have to only accept the newest ICD, which depathologize the transgender diagnosis.
In 2018, so it's been 4 years already. And Heather, would you also like to say something? No?
It seems to be a common ground here that medical professions, GPs, psychiatrists, and also psychologists, but also social service workers, do not have any content about these matters during their degrees. And we have an organization, it's an Emuna, and they are targeting GPs all over the country, teaching them about these issues, namely trans and non-binary questions. And also there is a need from the medical students associations, asking associations to go there and speak with medical students about these issues, because in their syllabus, they don't have the subject.
Thank you so much for answering this question and for your great work during this whole panel. And I think I'll leave it up to Connie then.
Yeah, sorry for stepping in. I just wanted to make us aware that we already used quite a lot of time, but that's of course something that we also planned for, and that's totally fine because there were so many questions, not only from us who were preparing them, but also from the audience. And I think we could probably extend this much further, but we also have other segments of this Pride still planned, and we want you to hang on to it. Before we do, I want to quickly say a big round of applause for our panelists. It's been absolutely marvelous to have you on. We were very, very happy to have you all come together from all these different places in our little Vault Pride 2022, and it's been very, very insightful and really nice to have you on. Thank you so much from everybody who's been involved. And yeah, before we move on, a quick note maybe. If you're following along and you want to somehow comment, or you have a question, or you want to share your thoughts on this, please use the hashtag europhoria and Vault Pride 2022. And we, of course, would be very, very happy to hear what you think and how you liked it and what you think we could do to improve it so far, but also what you would wish for our next Pride in the next year. And without further ado, I would like to move over and give the microphone to Electra and then to the people who are presenting for our country panorama. Thank you so much. And also thank you to Marco, of course, for moderating the
welcome.
there. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. And what a lovely panel discussion we had. So now we're moving to the country panorama, where we are going to see the state of the union, how LGBTIAQ+ issues are handled in some countries in the European Union, and what Volt does about this. First, we have Christos Delasoudas from Greece, my dear colleague and friend, who will be presenting the Greek viewpoint on this. Christos?
Hi, thank you all. I'm happy to be here, and will I proceed? How do we proceed? Do I say a few things about myself, or we just
and we're going to present show the presentation.
Presentation. Okay, let me share the screen.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the state of Greece regarding our issues. That's a few things about myself. I'm a member of the Finance and Ethics Committee. I'm neurodivergent, as we say. I've had the queer experience during my crisis, and I'm also practicing polyamory. Here's my Facebook, and okay. Now in Greece, there's no regular marriage or adoption rights. There was a civil partnership introduced in 2015, but it's not a complete. It's not complete regarding all the rights. Binary legal gender change is only available through a court procedure, but excuse me, because but thankfully it has been demedicalized, which means it doesn't need. It used to be that you would need a medical certificate to prove that you have some sort of mental disorder in order to be accepted, for a gender change to be accepted. So this is no longer the case, and you just do it with simply stating your desire, your identity in the court. It has been an issue, about having the session in private. and sometimes courts are not very, and courts in general in Greece are not very sensitive with the language they use. It's an ongoing effort to change that. Hormone replacement therapy is covered by public insurance, which is good. Surgery is still considered cosmetic, so it's not covered. Conversion therapy is almost banned, requires consent, but there's a tricky part here because consent is considered to be given after the age of 18. But still, even the age of 18, maybe until early adulthood, is still a very vulnerable condition in Greece, because there's a huge unemployment in youth unemployment in Greece. So most young adults are vulnerable to family pressure. So unless it's completely banned, even without consent, you cannot say that there is a safe environment. And intersex medical interventions are banned. What do we do in Volt? We have a dedicated team working on policies. We are actively joining Pride events all over the country. Recently, we've been in Thessaloniki and in Athens. We raise awareness on social media through our personal accounts and also the Volt account. We advocate for unconditional equality. We are combating discrimination in the community, and we strive to have presence even for non-binary, asexual, and polyamorous situations. We lead by example, and we put LGBTIAQ+ people on the forefront, and we have Electra here as a living example of this. She is our secretary of the party. And of course, we act as individual members in many activist groups. And here are our handles in the social media. And Christos is out. That's it.
Thank you very much, Christos. What a lovely presentation. And we are moving on from Greece now to Germany to have the State of the Union from their perspective. So from Germany, we should be having Lara to join us. She should be, or they should be here shortly. Lara?
Yes.
Where is your...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Now we can see as well.
Okay, my screen sharing work too? Perfect. Yep. Okay, great. Then I guess I'll just start. Hi, first of all, and thank you for the great moderation, presentation, talks, and everything that has already happened here in the talk. It was amazing so far. I'm here this evening to tell you a little bit about the legal and kind of societal situation in Germany. So maybe first a few words about myself. My name is Lara. I am the co-president of Volt North Rhine-Westphalia, which is the biggest regional chapter of Volt Germany. And well, since I've joined, diversity and equality have always been like the topic closest to my heart, basically. I identify as gender fluid, and so as a non-binary person myself, queer politics has always been what I was most connected to, whether it be in my hometown, in the city council, in activism in society, and of course in Volt as well. My presentation, I think I might have gone a little bit overboard with the length of it, so I might have to brush over some of the points, but if you are interested in it, then for sure we can provide you with the presentation later, or you can just contact me under those social media handles and we can have a chat about it, and I can share it with you there. Yeah, so I'll start, I guess. Germany is most widely regarded one of the, well, I guess, most queer-friendly countries in the world, definitely in Europe. Although I have to say that it is especially gay-friendly, and there's a long way still to go for other sexual orientations and gender identities, especially. Maybe as like a little bit of a hallmark, same-sex marriage has only been legal in Germany for 5 years. Which is not that long, actually, and it's kind of mind-boggling to me that it's only been 5 years since we have had legal same-sex marriage, but that's what it is. So, and also in Germany, like, some things are still kind of new. And when it comes to discrimination, there is no general ban against discrimination in regards to sexual orientation or gender identity in the national constitution, although it is illegal in specific fields. These are mainly employment, goods and services, education, and health services. And hate speech is also forbidden, although those rules do not apply in church organizations. On trans, non-binary, and intersex rights, there's quite a, well, I'll say, moved history about it. Official gender change is technically legal in Germany since 1980, but at first it was only after sex reassignment surgery and sterilization, which thankfully has since then been declared unconstitutional. And what we now have is the TSG, which is the Transsexuellengesetz or transsexual law. And the current version basically requires of you an official court ruling by a judge and a very burdensome process behind that to change your official gender identity in your passport documents and everything. And that takes a lot of time and emotional and financial resources. So it's been like, there are a lot of stones put in your path to do that, and it's very hard to achieve. We are on the road to a self-determination model that's been demanded by a few parties and, of course, queer rights organizations, but it has received some backlash also by conservatives, and this is in parentheses for a reason, women's rights activists, but it's in discussion currently under the new government we have. For intersex children, there is an option for the gender to be left blank since 2013, and since 2018, they can register themselves or be registered by their parents as diverse, but this needs a medical certificate. So this gender entry is not available to anyone who does not have a medical certificate labeling them as intersex. Hormone therapy is available to trans youths here, and hormones and surgery can even be paid for by health insurance, provided you have psychological reports to prove the medical necessity for it. By the way, it has only been since 2017, I think, that transsexuality has not been labeled a psychological illness anymore, and rather like a discrepancy of some kind. We have, well, our adoption and parental laws are a mixed bag, I would say. The main thing is that there are actually no parental rights for the non-biological parent in a queer relationship. And assisted reproduction procedures are, you don't have a legal right to them. So you're kind of depending on the goodwill of the agencies and firms who are doing this. So basically, same-sex parents have to have their children to be adopted by the other parent. And this is very different for heterosexual cis couples where also one person is not the biological parent. It's much easier for them. Some other topics, conversion therapy is banned, thankfully so, but also only since 2020, which is, again, mind-boggling to me. And blood donations currently for men who have sex with men have a 4 months sex abstinence period required. But this has also been a major improvement since 2016 when it was completely prohibited. So in general, you could say that there are many good legal basics, but in Germany, there's still like a Christian conservative worldview that is very strong in society. And it shows in the way people think, that how everything is structured and how materials like learning materials in school and everything are shaped. Also, as in many countries in Europe, the far-right views are very much on the rise, and the statistics of hate crimes, especially queerphobic hate crimes, have actually been going up for the last few years quite alarmingly. So there are these things have to be considered also in the current situation here. How are we involved to facilitate change? In Germany, in the last few elections, our main demands have been marriage for everyone, like we have for all of Europe, support EU sanctions for anti-queer nations, change the law of descent for rainbow families, get protection against discrimination for sexual preference or gender identity into paragraph 3 of the Constitution, which is where all the other protections against discriminations are listed. Then a self-determined legal gender entry, non-discriminating individual risk assessment for blood donations, and teaching and information material that is diverse and non-discriminatory in every state, institution, and school. And the biggest challenges with that are that, well, we need to basically further support the changes in our legal system that have taken place in the last years and that hopefully will take place in the next years under the new government. We definitely have to strengthen specifically trans and non-binary rights. And we have to fight hate, the far right, and religious fundamentalism, which is still going strong, especially in certain parts of the country. And to sum it up, basically, we have to facilitate the legal groundwork that is already there, that we already have, and that is to come yet in society, because people's minds and hearts have at many points not yet been reached. So it's not really being lived what the law already states. And we have to do that through education and activism. And that's, like, I guess, one of the main roles that we see ourselves with Volt here in Germany and society. That's been it. I hope that was not too long, and that's been the overview over how it is in Germany and what we're doing with Volt Germany concerning queer rights. And thank you for listening, definitely. And this is how you can contact us or me in Northern Westphalia. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lara. Amazing presentation and very detailed. And actually, it has been very, very, very enlightening to have it that much detailed. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks.
Now we are moving on with Spain, the perspective there, with Leire Jaén joining us from Spain. We should have her here in a bit. Hello, Leire. I think you need to unmute yourself. You are still muted. And we are going to see your presentation in a bit. We are having some. All right, now I think we can see the presentation as well. So, Leire, whenever you're ready, you can unmute yourself and start presenting the perspective of Spain. Leire, I think you are still muted. You are on mute. Leire, I don't think we can hear you. Can you check your microphone settings? We are having a small problem here. Excuses for a bit. These happen in live as before with me. So technicalities are always a part of the game. Leire, can you let's test if we can hear you. Later. I don't think we can hear you at the moment again. Your microphone is not working. I think we can hear you now. Yes, there is something coming out.
Now.
Yes. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Electra. Next slide. I am Leire from Spain, and I am going to make the following presentation about the problems of the community in Spain and the actions carried out by the Spanish chapter. Next. Please.
I think we need to move on with the slides. We are
Next slide.
having a technical problem. Yeah.
Okay. As is happening in other countries of the free world, the reactionary extremist wave has also affected Spain. The far right has experienced a dangerous rise, and in their rejection of the different, they also threaten the trans community. Unfortunately, there are also traditional parties that have given way to conservative ideas regarding gender identity, and the rights and laws of the LGBTIQ+ collective come to be discussed. Certain media outlets have published a lot of misinformation about trans people, while numerous militants of the feminist movement have joined the transphobic wave and opposed the approval of a new trans law and any advance of rights of trans people, especially women, arguing that it is misogyny and an erasure of women. Other problems are the precarious situation of the trans group with a high unemployment rate, more than 80%, and the rejection of a good part of the LGBTIQ+ young people by their families. Next slide. Next slide.
We need to move the slide. Yeah.
Thank you. At Vol Spain, we have worked and continue to do so for the rights of trans and LGBTIQ+ people. Last year, an article was written for the International Trans Day of Remembrance. And this year, on the occasion of the International Day of Transgender Visibility, a few days later, a round table was held in which several trans rights activists intervened, and with whom I am very grateful. Work is currently underway on future policies to be implemented with regard to the trans and non-binary themes. Finally, I want to send a huge thank you to my chapter for making all this possible and for their commitment, and also to all the voters for making Vol Europe a safe place for trans people. It is all, and thank you.
Thank you, Leira, for the presentation. We had some technical problems here, but it worked out in the end. For those wondering, well, we needed to separately present, and because Leira is joining us from her phone. So thank you, Leira, so much for the lovely presentation. And now we are going to move to the Italian chapter, to Pietro, who is going to show us what is going on in Italy at the moment with the LGBTQIA rights. Pietro?
Yes. Yeah, okay. You are sharing already the presentation for me?
I can see the presentation is being shared already. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry. It's so fine. But then let's go to the next. One second. Anyway, this is the presentation of Italy, as you see. But then now I didn't manage to go to the next slide.
Yeah. Maybe you would like to take over presenting, sharing your screen? Would that be easier for you?
It's the same. It's just that okay. No, I just wasn't. I was not just
okay.
Not understanding too many.
Okay. You may share your screen and
no.
Good. It's okay.
Put it already. Put it again. It's better because my computer doesn't show the perfect graphics. The perfect
I see.
It's better. So okay. Then this is the current state of the LGBTQ plus rights in Italy. Italy, it's not really high in the Rainbow Index. Actually, I think that is a bit too penalized, even because being queer, it's not so incredibly bad. There are some countries that are upon Italy that are, I don't know. I think that they're not so incredibly better than us. But in general, from a legislative point of view, it's not really good, the situation, because for example, to legally change the gender, there is a law that is still the same from the 1982, and only with with an action of the court of the Supreme Court of Italy, let's say Constitutional Court, now they are not anymore obliged to sterilize themselves. But in general, it was one of the first laws that was never touched again. So it was quite difficult to. It is quite difficult now. Now it's a bit old. In general, the sanitarian, the health workers have no really idea how to speak even to trans people or in any way to LGBTI people, because they are not really instructed. We have also, not only in the matter of transition, but also if you go to normal doctors, let's say that, not psychiatrists and so on, they really don't know really how to, misgendering is really common. Intentional misgendering, that is a problem. Then there is no a law that recognizes discrimination, that doesn't recognize in any kind of ways hate speech in Italy, because there was one in the parliament in the last legislature, but then in the government before the Draghi one, but then it fails. The law fails, and the Senate of the Republic claps their hands because the right, the far right parties clap their hand in the parliament. So was really happy. It was really beautiful view. Then conversion therapies are not banned, and the problem is that usually they're not also run by actual psychiatrists or psychologists, but they're run by priests or whatever. So they also fake their own titles to pretend to be qualified, but they are even not. So there is even worse stuff about. Doctors usually encourages families to intervene on intersex babies, and there is no laws that in general give basic terms of not interaction but of action when there is an intrinsic baby. So there are sometimes still last time that I saw it was some years ago in articles in newspapers that says great doctors save baby from being correct the babies. And so, it is a bit, a news in a national newspaper about that. So it's really not really a topic for now. And then there is no kind in any level of school, there is no kind of sexual education at all, because in general, for also the president of the church and so on, but in general, we actually don't have absolutely nothing. And that obviously is a problem, because usually people then get sexual education with porns. That is obviously not correct, because it's not reality. And we have civil unions since 2016, but the egalitarian marriage, it will probably be quite in the far future, because the next election in 2 weeks will probably give the country to the super far right. That it can be that also it will be even able to change alone the constitution. So the positions are really the conditions are really not good in Italy in perspective. They're not so bad. I mean, I'm quite, for example, I know that I'm a gay man, not trans, no, I mean, but anyway, I never got, for example, punched or aggressed. I mean, sometimes verbally, but something like 2 times. I'm really open with my boyfriend in the streets, and nothing happens. So in general, it's not so bad. In general, gay people, mostly gay, yes, that is true, but are quite respected. Trans, it's really more complicated, also because there is not for now so many people that came out, and so it's really a stuff that it's not so easy to say yet, probably, even if we have a really kind of famous politician that is trans and take the fights, the trans fights in general in the parliament. Then we can go on. We can go to the next slides. Yes, thank you. Then, okay, I didn't change that, but yeah. Then Volt, what Volt does. Volt actually, I mean, in Italy at least, points a lot on the legislative points. So Volt proposed an organic laws against discrimination that could include the law that didn't pass in the last legislature, but I mean, the law that involved Italy, it's working on, it's really wider and really better in general, because it includes a lot more of stuff, like yes, I mean, depathologized all identities, and in general includes more specific, more cases, let's say that, because the other law was, there was a problem with gender identity that was not, some people didn't want to include gender identity in the criminals, in the stuff that on which you cannot be discriminated for the law. Then again, modify the law to regulate the legal gender making, also because you have always to pass from a psychiatrist and a judge, and then some expenditures are promoted by the states, are done by the states, but some others are by your own. So it's not free for everyone to actually change their gender, because if they have to go to a lawyer then they have obviously to pay it. So this law could Volt propose to make all the legal expenditure free for the person, and also the medications, because not all medications are actually supported by the national health system. Then we would like to give not a tutorial, but basic rules to treat intersex babies, because sometimes obviously it is right to operate if there is a medical problems, if there is an actual medical problem, but in general, if not, doctors, they do just a cosmetic stuff that is not obviously okay, and there is the need to put low regulations. Then we propose it's to introduce compulsory sexual and emotive education to make also people understand that people that are different from you are not, it's not needed. You don't have to discriminate them if they are different, and that people are not wrong if they feel, what they feel, and so on. So it's kind of because again, here in Italy, there is absolutely nothing like that. All the people that had sexual education was from the initiative of teachers or single schools, nothing more. So it is, it is, yes. And then there is, Volt wants to recognize the rainbow families that already exist, so people that have already kids, for example, and reforming the adoption law, because for example, we have the civil union, but we don't have the stepchild adoption in general for everything, or for every kind of the way that you got the kid, that was pregnancy for others, or just your previous relationship baby. And then obviously we want to enforce egalitarian marriage. Yes, and then I think I'm mostly done.
Thank you, Pietro, for the presentation. It was very, very detailed, and curious how we can get to know more about Volt Italia.
Yes, I mean, it was just that everything is, every account is called Volt Italia. So I mean,
yeah. And we can find you on social media as Volt Italia. And now we move to our last
no, I mean, just to be clear, I put in the second slide my personal contacts. Then because I to see a template of the presentation, I saw another presentation, and so yes, exactly that. And I've seen another presentation at the end. There was a stuff of Volt Italia. There was a Volt country stuff. So just that.
All right, thank you very much. And here is how we can get to know more about Pietro. And now we're joined by Richard from the Netherlands, who is going to present the Dutch perspective in LGBTIQA plus rights. Richard.
Yes, well, thank you. The Netherlands. Well, and if I can see the next slide, then I can introduce it a little bit more. Yes, well, at this point, the Netherlands ranks 13 on the European Rainbow Index, and declining actually for some years. Once the Netherlands was leading in LGBT rights, but this whole process came to a standstill in the last 10 years. And when it comes to trans rights, we're still at the start for laws and protection and for this group within the LGBTQ community. So there is still much work to do on this. When it comes to trans people at this point, the waiting list is growing, and there is almost no places that specialize in trans help. So the waiting list is 1 to 3 years to get the right help, and this is even an intake at a clinic or for therapy, the psychologist. So, well, I think that if we don't change this in our health system, that people need to wait this long, I think that it causes more damage at this point, especially for younger people that need that help. Conversion therapy, there's still a lot of debate about that for years going on, and it's still not forbidden. So it should be banned in my opinion, but there is still debate whether or not, and if you can check if it's not prosecuted anymore. So when it comes to a new law for develop and there's a new law being developed for to change your gender. So at this point, you can change your gender without any doctor's note, or you can just go to the city hall and ask for this instead of going to a doctor or a court. So it makes it more easy to change your gender that fits you more. But there is still debate, and there is a growing, especially feminist group, that are really transphobic at this point, and they don't see this as a right for anyone to do this. To the point of asylum seekers, this process is really inhumane. People really need to deliver proof that they are gay or lesbian. They need to do it with proof of pictures, that they have dating apps. They need to tell when they come out. So this whole procedure is based on a Western ideology of coming out and being gay. And there is still people that don't get asylum in the Netherlands for not being gay enough. So these people are potentially in danger if they get rejected and sent back to their country. And then we have victims of hate crime, because there is in court people that when the judge in court says, well, gay is just a common swearing, so it's not a hate crime, and then it's the outcome of that process is different. And then we see also the rise of the right-wing parties that are say that all the LGBTQ is like propaganda and we don't need to accept this in our society. So there is still threats going on, and there is a lot of work to keep the rights and make progress in the Netherlands. If I can see the next slide, then I can say what Volt wants in the Netherlands. Is there a next slide?
I think we need to change that. Yeah.
Okay.
One second. I think we have a person who is handling.
Yes, so as you can see, the Volt Netherlands works on proposals to make things better and to change the current situation. The first one is like free PrEP medications to prevent new HIV cases. At this point, you need to pay for the PrEP medication. The prices are going down, and there is projects where you pay like €7 to get that medication, but Volt in the Netherlands want this to be free for everyone. Then Volt signed the Rainbow Memorandum in the Netherlands. This is a memorandum that is signed by other parties, and they make they promise in this that they make work of LGBTQA+ rights and make progress and make new proposals to change the situation. Also, Volt pleads for a change in the constitution. In Article 1 of the constitution in the Netherlands, that says that everyone is equal At this point, gender and sexual orientation is not mentioned, and Volt wants this in the Constitution so that this includes also sexual orientation and gender, so that is also protected by the Constitution for people. Then Volt proposed the same maternity leave for same-sex couples. There is still a difference in the Netherlands between men and women for maternity leave, and for men it's a couple of days. So Volt wants this to be the same for men, men and women, or rainbow couples, so they have the same maternity leave off. Then Volt wants to a legal recognition of trans fathers, a halt on surgery for intersex babies, more education. So for inclusive society, that also brings the subjects of LGBTQA+ rights and other things related to that, and a complete ban of conversion therapy. I think this is my presentation for now. Also, I need to mention a lot of things for the Netherlands, please, is also European policies. So if you want to read that, you can just check those.
Thank you very much, Richard.
You're welcome.
For the presentation. And I want to thank again everyone who presented their perspective from their countries. So now we're moving to our final segment, the closing statement, which will be done by Ines Consoni, who is a board member of Volt Europa. And she will be joining us in a few seconds, I guess, so we can hear the perspective of the European board of Volt Europa, and as well get to close this amazing event that we have. And hello, Ines.
Hello, Electra.
So nice to see you again. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So hello, everyone. It is a true pleasure to be here with you today. I have learned so much and felt so inspired to listen to all the speakers this evening. I want to extend a sincere thank you to all the people who have enabled for Volt Pride to happen this year, and a very special and heartfelt thank you must be given to my colleague and friend, Connie. Connie is an inspiration to me of hard work, honesty, kindness, and unwavering hope that the world we know can change. So thank you. So my name is Ines Consoni. I'm a non-executive board member at Volt Europa, and I was born and raised in Portugal by a Portuguese mother and an Italian father in a very European household. Currently, I live in Warsaw with my partner and our pets. And as you can imagine, this is a very common story in Volt. So I want to tell you a bit today about the household I came from. So I came from a household with a mother who worked in fashion. And as such, for me, it was part from a very young age to be in the middle of artists and stylists who back then were part of the beating heart of Portugal's queer community. My parents could not always afford a babysitter, and so my mom took me often to work. However, as I moved on to school, prejudice my early childhood had been free of became inevitable. This prejudice corrupted the ideas of my ability as a woman and smashed any pride and joy my queer colleagues had. I grew up in this societal environment which had this narrative of awkwardly accepting the queer community, but not really wanting to talk about it and even recognize it, much less to celebrate it. This led to immense and unnecessary suffering. The world in school was such much more colorless place than the one my mom introduced me at her work, which I remember fondly as a child as extravagant, loud, beautiful, unique, caring, free, and full of love. I never understood the separation created, this us and them. In my mind as a kid, all I wished for was that world to spill over mine and fill it with freedom, acceptance, and joy. And I think this is a core problem today. We think fighting for queer rights, for women and girls' rights, for the rights of people of different ethnicities, for people of color, for religious minorities' rights, and people of different socioeconomic status are separate issues and are disconnected. So we often tend to use a vocabulary which segregates instead of recognizing and learning about different realities and uniting all of us towards the ultimate goals: freedom, rights enshrined in law, love, and respect. Coalition should be our way forward as we fight today and all days to come towards a future in which we can all be free and safe to be who we are, together, strong and fearless. As the great work of the generation of our grandparents and great-grandparents was to create the European Union following the war, our parents to develop it and shape it to the form of today, then ours is to save it and transform it into one that respects and embraces people and communities across this great union. For anyone who is listening to me and feels tired of fighting towards a reality that seems they will never see, for whom it seems that what I'm preaching here is too much, a coalition also means that in the days which seems that it is too hard and too sad to carry on, because there are days when cruelty and unfairness appear to win, we will be together. You will never stand alone. We must fight together towards this brighter future that, as my colleague Connie rightfully pointed out, trans and non-binary people have been at the forefront in building. We all owe you a great debt for your tireless work and often your sacrifice. And precisely for this, we must not only express gratitude to you, but move towards brave and continuous action and mobilization. This will make us stronger, it will make Europe more resilient, and it will develop our democracies, our kindness, our uniqueness, and our creativity. It is what will be responsible to achieve this new version of our union. As we close this year's EuroPride, I wanted to share the lyrics of the song Quero é Viver by one of the greatest artists in Portugal, António Variações. He was a world traveler, loved deeply, dressed boldly, sang and composed with passion and creativity, and lived openly and freely. António Variações was a queer artist who opened Portugal in the 80s to the concepts of consent, love outside of traditional structures, and being true to yourself. António lived a short life that I feel is often not remembered and honored enough. So today, I leave you with his words. E a vida and life é sempre uma curiosidade, is always a curiosity, que me desperta com a idade, that wakens me as I grow older. Interessa-me o que está para vir, I'm interested in what's to come. A vida, life, em mim é sempre uma certeza, is always a certainty for me, que nasce da minha riqueza, that comes from my wealth, do meu prazer em descobrir, and from my pleasure in discovering. Encontrar, renovar, vou fugir ou repetir, to find, to renew, I'll run away or repeat, vou viver, I'm going to live. Até quando? Eu não sei. Until when? I don't know. Que me importa o que serei? I don't care what I will be. Quero é viver. I want to live. Amanhã, tomorrow, espero sempre um amanhã. I always expect a tomorrow. E acredito que será mais prazer. And I believe it will be another pleasure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for welcoming me here. And just thank you for everything.
Thank you so much, Ines. I'm quite speechless after this wonderful closing statement. What can I say? That was pretty magnificent and touching. So thank you so much for your words and for your thoughts and everything that you want to leave us with. I guess this is now the last time that we can sort of say thanks to everybody who was involved. I would like for my other co-moderators to come onto the stage, Elektra and Marco, who've been so much help in making this event possible. This would not have been possible without you and without many other people. Huge thank you to you, Marco, for all these tireless hours that we spent on making this event happen. The exact same to you, Elektra, with all your spirit and all of these ideas that were coming in to make the Trans in Europe presentation happen. Thank you, Ines. And to present here, to be available and to spend all of this time is quite remarkable and quite cool. So thank you so much. Especially these two have been at the very core of what made this event possible. But there are, of course, more people. We have Dan Jansen, who is also the part of the leadership team at the LGBTIQ plus group at Vault Europa. We have Maurice Lawrence, who's been tirelessly working in the back and making all of this technically possible and not shirking away when there were tiny bits of hiccups and just pushing through and making an amazing work the entire day already. Of course, thank you to Ines. That was a very, very beautiful speech, but also for all the encouragement and all the feedback and all the positive words and the believing in us and making this happen was very, very helpful. Also have to say thank you to Min Huang. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's been so helpful in making, in organizing the event, helping us put everything up, coordinating with the different parts of Vault to put us all here in this room together today. And the same goes out to Josef Jaroli, who's been working on the comms end, who's been pushing out these almost daily profiles of our panelists at a very short time frame, and that is definitely not usual. So thank you so much. Of course, also to Francesca Romana D'Antuono, who is our co-president of Vault Europa, who has been helping us in the very early stages of the event and putting together different topics and helping us moving it forward. And last but not least, I also want to do a shout out to Jana Wilke, who was making the design for our event, which is also really good. I'm missing a whole lot of people. First of all, our panelists and our presenters for the Country Panorama, but everybody else who's been supporting us and helping us. I am so thankful. And I guess my co-moderators are also extremely thankful for all your help and your support. That is the Vault Pride 2022. Any last words, Marco, Elektra?
Yes, it was a pleasure as always. And thank you, Connie, for really, truly making this all work, for all those endless hours, for giving us feedback and just making sure everything was set into place. Without you, it just wouldn't be, we wouldn't all be here and everyone wouldn't be having this wonderful night like I am.
Exactly. It was, I mean, I'm going to make a confession. I was having some very, very rough days lately, and the understanding and the support that Connie showed, I cannot describe it with words. So thank you a lot, Connie, for making this possible in every way possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now, before we all start to cry, I probably should close the event. And thank you so much for all your kind words. It means a lot. And yeah, see you around. Share your thoughts. I already said that. EuroPride 2022 is the hashtag, as well as hashtag europhoria. So Euro and euphoria. And yep. That was the EuroPride 2022. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and participating.
Thank you, everyone.